And we're live for all the internet. No, I'm just kidding. Um, all right. So, welcome to Inside Real Estate. This is episode 53. Our guest today, Ha-Lim Lee. She's an agent working in and around Manhattan and North Jersey, but started a real estate career in Hong Kong. Ha-Lim didn't come here with an idea of how this business works. She came here with real experience, real markets, and we're excited to get her perspective on the industry. Ha-Lim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. This is such a privilege.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you had mentioned to me when we spoke earlier that you thought this business was probably going to be easy getting into it.
Yep.
And then you figured out what it was really all about. So what was the hard way, right? What's the first, when did you realize that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park? Was it when you were here in the States or when you were in China?
So just want to make one correction. I started my real
Okay, I'm
estate, no, it's okay. No worries. Business in New York in a luxury condo market.
okay.
Back in the early, during the heydays, when people are lining up to get pre-construction units. And now the market is very different. And then moved to Hong Kong, and I was there for 12 years. Got my license there. Worked with a lot of expat and Chinese clientele there, and then moved back 3.5 years ago, and kind of started with a blank slate here. So it's been an interesting journey. So going back to your question, the reason why I got into this business was I was an architect for many years. Graduated from Columbia, had a glamorous, architect, a career as an architect. And, my husband and I bought a co-op on the upper West Side by Columbia when we got married. And, this agent who showed this unit showed us this one unit, total fixer-upper, did the deal. Within, 3 months, she had this commission check in her hands. And I thought, well, she didn't do very much. I could do better than what she can. I'm an architect. I can do much better. That's how I got into this business. And I was, quite disillusioned in the architecture industry. I was not in a good place. I really wanted to get out and find something else. And I thought, well, this should be easy. Look what she did. I can do better. So that was the start of my journey. Only to find out it's not so easy and it's not so glamorous. It's really been rewarding, but also extremely stressful and journey. But I would say more rewarding because I'm sticking with it and I still love it.
Oh, that's what we like to hear from the agents we work with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how long were you doing it here before you moved to Hong Kong?
Um, Only about 2 years. I'm like going back to I was right around the time I got pregnant with my first, and then I moved to Hong Kong. But I was
Okay.
only in luxury condo sales between New York and New Jersey, so that was very different, and it was a very different market than what it is now. And
Okay.
I was on site. I had buyers coming to me. It was very comfortable. But now that I'm a free agent, it's a very different story. I gotta hustle. I gotta get my own clients. I gotta get my own leads. I'm always out there meeting people and networking. And, people are like looking at my Facebook and Instagram, like, you're out there all the time. How do you do it? Like, it doesn't that get tired? I'm like, yes, it does. But that's actually, 50% of my job. I need leads. I can't just sit in my room and hope that people are going to come to me. And that doesn't work that way like it did during, the heyday of luxury condo sales. So,
No.
yeah, yeah. But actually, that's the part that I actually enjoy, meeting new people as well. So it kind of fits my personality, you
Well,
know.
if real estate's your business, people are your business, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So you started here, you went to Hong Kong. What
Mhm.
was the change like doing business over there, coming from here?
I mean, it was. shocking. There's no such thing as exclusive agent. There's no MLS. There's absolutely no transparency. So, I mean, you had to work 4 times harder to get half the commission. And the commission rate is pretty much half of what you get here. So, I mean, talk about hustling. And you're in like 120-degree weather with 100% humidity,
Hmm.
like sweating your butt off. Going to all, and no matter how expensive these places are, you're looking at like $10 million, townhouse, and there's still cockroaches everywhere, dead cockroaches.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's just, but you get used to it after a while. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
$10 million.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it was a steep learning curve for me, but I got through it. I had some very, I worked mostly with expat clientele who was loyal to me, who
Hmm.
trusted me, which is what this business is all about. And I found them great places. But that's not always. Most of the time, it's not the case because every agent has their own listing. It's called pocket listing, right? Which doesn't exist so
Hmm.
much anymore. Um, but even within your own brokerage, agents wouldn't share their secret, listings with other agents within the brokerage because
Yeah.
it was their own, and they wanted the customer to come to them for their own listings.
Right.
So it was extremely frustrating. Like I would have to run to, make friends with all the agents and call them up and listen, I have a buyer or tenant who's looking for this. Do you have anything? And eventually when you get into the circuit, they do help you because they know you have vetted, client that you work with, exclusive clients. But it took a long time to get used to the whole system because it's just that much harder when there's no transparency.
So it sounds like even like from the client perspective and from the agent perspective, we're kind of
Hmm.
spoiled over here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm working with, I work with quite a few expat clientele and they're just not used to that system. And they're like, well, what do you mean I have to sign this with you? I don't have to sign anything in Asia. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's not how it works here, you know?
Yeah.
So
Excuse me.
sure.
So when you took what you the experience you had from over here and went over there, did that was that helpful having that experience ahead of time, or did it's so different that it didn't really apply?
Oh, no, no. I think any experience as an agent, you can, is transferable to any locale. Because I had the experience, I was jump right in, and yes, the transaction process is a little bit different, but it's not that much more different. But I think it's finding the actual property that's extremely different because there's just there's no MLS, right?
Right.
No Zillow. You have to go to every brokerage's website to see what they have, and even then, you know, they don't disclose everything.
That sounds. I mean, it sounds like it's similar to either like the beaches or like mountain areas and stuff where like it's more like vacation rentals because all the different brokerages is like, oh, you have to come to us
They
if you want
have
to see everything.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah. But
yes,
that's
yeah.
based on the way today works. It's like that stinks for
Uh,
the
it,
client, and it's probably a
well,
pain in the butt.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't benefit anyone, right? It's actually
Right.
detrimental to the whole industry. It doesn't
Hmm.
benefit honestly, that's what it is. It's like everyone's working 3 times, 4 times harder, but it's detrimental to everyone. So, I actually had a conversation with one of the top Hong Kong agents about this. He's like, "How can we change this?" I'm like, "It's a systematic issue, right? So it
Hmm.
has to come from legislation, basically, which is what's happened. I'm sure it took years you know, for us to get to this point as well, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So
Did they have they to your knowledge have they improved that since you were there, or is it still kind of the
nothing.
same?
No, it's the same.
Oh
Nothing.
man.
I know. I know. I was lucky to work for more westernized brokerage firm in Hong Kong called OK.com. I loved working for them. Shout out to OK. And it was very much more supportive, shared information, very much like where I am at Coldwell Banker. So that, everyone was extremely supportive. Everyone shared their information, their listings on our website. And, but they were smart too. They had a system where if you shared your listings, you get a cut of it, right?
Okay.
So they gave them incentive to share their listings. So, they
Makes
figured
sense.
out a roundabout way of doing it. But, it's just extremely frustrating for everyone. And I really hope the system changes at some point.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that's frustrating. Okay. So what would you think, like, what's a misconception Americans might have if, like, let's say, hey, I wanted to go buy, I've done, bought and sold real estate here, and, like, let's say I wanted to go buy a place over there. What would you think be the biggest misconception they would have going into that deal?
You mean in Hong Kong
Mm-hmm.
specifically, or
Or
outside of the U.S.?
yeah, I
It,
would.
hello?
Let's
Okay.
go with outside of the U.S.
Oof. I think the lack of transparency would be very frustrating, because
Okay.
Americans are spoiled. We look at Zillow in New York, you look at Street Easy, every single listing's out there. That's your MLS, right? So,
Yeah.
and easier for us too, because, we don't always know exactly what they want, but they do. So they go to Zillow and they're like, oh, can we, obviously, you have to become their agent and they have to trust you. But, oftentimes I'll miss the listing and they'll come to me and say, oh, can we see this? Well, oh, I didn't see that before, but they'll come and, tell me what they want to see. You don't have that, because if they find that listing, which belongs to another agent, they have to go to that agent. So they have to end up working with like, five, six, seven, eight different agents and go to their own listing, right? You don't have one point of contact, and good luck setting up appointments with that one and that one and that one and that one, because that's going to cost you your time. Whereas if you
Right.
come to me, I can help you set everything up, right? It's just one phone call or one text.
What's financing like over there? Will banks over that finance deals here work over there, or it's like you're dealing with the whole system is based over there?
Yes, totally. It's 50% down. So, and
Wow.
minimum at minimum, you're talking a tiny studio, million. You're lucky,
Wow.
right? So what new, Jen, what, I mean, it's really mind-boggling, who, like, what kid in their early 20s has, $500,000 to put down. Obviously
None.
they get a lot of help from their parents. They're lucky. Many of them are lucky. They get help from their parents, but many don't. So this is why, I think there's a lot of disappointment and, yeah, among
It
the young Hong Kong generation.
is real estate over there looked at the same way it's looked at here as an investment and
Oh,
with appreciating
absolutely.
value.
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. That, for Asians, yes, that is their social mobility, right? They definitely see it that way, especially for Asians. But yeah, I think it's getting really harder and harder, and I don't think it's getting. Yeah, I don't think the
Yeah.
government is making it any easier either. There's really not much affordable housing there.
Yeah. That's crazy. And we're over here complaining about affordable housing.
Exactly. I don't know if you heard of these cage people, but a cage costs like a few $100,000, and that's where they live because
Mm-mm.
that's all they could afford.
Yeah.
And it's sad because they, Hong Kongese, they work very hard for their money. You
I
know?
have no doubt. Okay, let's kind of come back to your business here. So after you started here, went there, and when you came back, what was the biggest thing that you were able to take from your experience over in Hong Kong that you applied to your business here?
I would say re- resilience, tenacity. I never gave up. And my clients know this. They're like, Ha-Lim, you work so hard, you never give up. No. Like I would literally knock on every single brokerage door and say, do you have this kind of listing? Because my client needs it. And
Yeah.
I was never shy about it. To be honest, like if I tell people like I'm actually an introvert, I'm actually a shy person, and they're like,
Hmm.
no, you're not, but I am. But this is my line of job, right? I have to do this for my clients, so I do it. But yeah, I think it really, I would say before that, I grew out of my shell as well. But selling luxury condo was much more comfortable because you could just sit in your seat and have the clients come to you.
Yeah.
Whereas in Hong Kong, I really needed to hustle, and I brought that back with me, and I had to build up my business. I thought, oh, I've done real estate here before, I'll pick right back up. Started emailing and texting my former clients, and but that was 12 years ago, you
Yeah.
know so I really had to start from blank slate, which was, to be honest, unexpected. But when life throws you lemon, you make lemonade, right?
I love it.
So yeah, I started getting leads from realtor.com because I didn't have my own leads. I started like in rough areas of New Jersey. That's where I started, Patterson, Newark, with multifamily investment clients. And that's where I started. And now, I was able to build it back up to where I left off, luxury sales in New York and New Jersey as well.
That's got to be confidence inspiring that you were able to, go from, I guess you had it easier when you were just dealing in the luxury stuff in the beginning to go to a market
Yeah,
where it's like, fighting for your life over there to
exactly.
come back, apply all of that stuff, and then to build yourself back up to here. I mean, it's gotta, if you take a look back on your career, I mean, it's gotta be awesome to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm proud of what I was able to accomplish. But, I think people just, now, people are texting me left and right, like, oh, I love seeing the success, what you've been through and where you are now. But it's like, they don't know like 70% of what I really went through, right? I don't share with them, or even on social media. Maybe I should, but my close friends, they know, they're like, Ha-Lim, we know what you've been through to get to where you are. And I'm so
Yeah,
proud of you. And I love hearing that.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, just with talking about building from the ground up here,
Hmm.
what if you were to do it again, or if you were to give some advice to somebody who is starting from scratch, what would
Hmm.
it be?
Give yourself 3 years. I thought when I moved back, oh, within 1 year, I'm going to pick right back up. I'm going to make this much money. It's going to be great. I think I'm an optimist by nature. Some people might disagree, but I am. And I'm like, oh, within 1 year, it's going to be great. I'm going to be back to where I am. Like, no, it took, I mean, my GCI, my, net, gross income, when I look at it, it's like every year it's been, 30 to 50% build up from where I started, where I started really low, right? And first year
Yeah.
was hard. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm working so hard. Where am I going with this? Second year, yeah, I could see. Third year, yes, there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. So give yourself 3 years, and be patient with yourself and give yourself grace, a lot of grace, because it's a tough business, and grow very thick skin. Because there are days like I am in tears. Like, why is this client treating me this way when I'm doing the best for this person? How come it's not, she's not grateful for what I'm doing? But you're gonna get some clients who are, some clients who are not. And you have to deal with both because, you don't know when the next lead is coming, and
Yeah.
what their it's really all about dealing with their personalities, right? And managing. It's people management really more than anything,
I
and
think that's
holding
gr-
their hands.
I think that's great advice. I a lot of agents will give also good advice, but I like how you're like 3 years because it's like, you know, and I always say it's like you don't always see the benefits of your labor immediately.
No, no, that is absolutely true. I remember working with clients, it took them a year. I had one client, a buyer I worked with for a year, and I was like, oh, I would see something that they should love, but they don't because, oh, the I don't like the landscaping in the backyard. I'm like, really? That's the only reason why? And I showed you 32 properties already, really? And there are times I just want to give up. I'm like, okay, you know what? One day we're gonna find that property. And we did. And they
Amazing.
absolutely love it.
All
But
right. So
it took time. It takes a lot of patience.
yeah, for sure. Hey, all good things take time, right?
Absolutely.
So walk me through your footprint of where you're doing business. So right, we have Manhattan, North Jersey. I think you said Queens, correct?
I'm starting to get into the Queens market and Brooklyn. Yeah, yeah. Brooklyn I've shown quite a bit. A lot of Williamsburg, Dumbo,
If you could only work in one of those markets, what's your favorite?
Manhattan.
Yeah.
I love
Why?
showing uh I think I love the agents in Manhattan. They tend to be all quite professional and really fun to work with. They come from all different backgrounds and they're respectful. Most of them are very respectful. I can't say that about all the agents, but most are. And they're fun. They're really fun to work with. And obviously, the units themselves are so, glamorous, many of them. I've shown some penthouse units or some crazy units with, wraparound balconies with panoramic views of Manhattan. And, you know, as an architect coming from an architecture background, right? To me, it's like, wow, or seeing really, really crappy fixer uppers and saying, wow, many of my clients don't see the potential beyond what it is, right? But I'm like, I walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh, what I would love to buy this and fix it up.
Yeah.
So I think the two extremes is so interesting to me.
Yeah. No, I mean it's being we do like I told you we do like the property marketing, so the photos, videos, all that stuff, and sometimes it's like one of the perks of the job is just seeing kind of like what you're
Seeing.
talking
Mhm.
about, seeing all these things. Like I always tell people, it's like I get to go into some houses I would otherwise have no business being
No,
in,
exactly.
seeing the
Exactly.
potential. And sometimes when we're in the city and like the rooftops and the views and all that type of thing
Hmm.
is really neat. So yeah, I
Yeah.
can totally understand that. Now, so you said the agents in Manhattan are fun to work with. Can you survive in real estate in Manhattan if you are not working your butt off?
Nope, I don't think so.
And
If you're not
the
a
reason I,
hustler, you're not going to survive.
no, and the reason I ask that is because in outward, like outside of Philly in the suburbs, and a lot of agents are like part-time agents
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that type
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
And so can those agents wouldn't do so well
Survive?
working in Manhattan?
No, no, no. There's just so much competition, and these agents are extremely sophisticated, right? So, if you're working with buyers and sellers, like they're gonna shop around and compare you to these, agents who know what they're doing, right? So
Hmm.
I find, most of those type of agents who start off end up working with top agents, right?
Hmm.
Assisting them in the beginning, and then they build themselves up to a point where they can be on their own. But I think to be on your own, it's hard. It's a really hard business. I think that plenty of them do it. And I think maybe many of them just stick to rentals because it's just easier. It's fast turnaround. Like sales, you're talking, 6 months to a year to close a deal. Because and we can talk about this later. There's
Yeah.
co-op and condo applications that's involved,
Yeah.
which is a huge time sucker.
Now, when I see agents on TV and stuff, like when you see some of the shows, and I mean, I know like
Yeah,
a lot of that's accentuated for
drama.
TV, but I hear them talking like referring to themselves as brokers. a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. And, here it's like, hey, I'm a realtor, or hey, I'm a real estate agent. Is that just the term that they use? Is there something different about, doing real estate there, that they're brokers and not just agents or realtors?
No,
Do
I
you call
think
yourself
that's
a broker, or do you call yourself an agent?
so. In New York, I call myself a broker. In New Jersey, I call myself an agent or a realtor.
So it's just
To
the
be,
language that they use.
I believe so. I don't think there's anything legal thing attached to it. I think it's just the language that they use. Yeah. So that is different, actually.
It sounds cooler. I'm a broker.
It does. I'm a broker. Yes, yes. We're all brokers, actually. But
Yes. Well, cool. What what part of doing business where you are demands the most local knowledge?
uh, I would say New York for sure. For me, it's Manhattan because when especially buyers come to me, some of them are not sure what area they want to be in, right? Oh, Upper West Side, but within Upper West Side, there's Lincoln Center, there's Central Park West, right? Columbus Circle. Um, or do you want to be Midtown, Murray Hill, Turtle Bay? What's the convenience factor there, or Upper East Side? So it's like having to guide them through where they want to live or where they want to invest for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, that's a huge decision. If they've never lived in New York, for example, I work a lot with expat clients who want to buy a pied a terre or a place for their children who are studying here or working here. Obviously they have a little bit of a say, but they want to rely on me on what's the best location. So I think it's very location specific, Manhattan. Brooklyn as well, but it's very defined, right? You have Dumbo, you have Williamsburg, and these are very, very different places, different vibes, right? Whereas New York, there's a little more nuance area, nuance among the different areas. So I think guiding them through where they want to buy a property is probably one of the most challenging part of my job. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Upper West Side. That's where I went to school, where I, lived for over 10 years. But I can't, you know, that's not everyone's, favorite. So selling them
So
on
you
different areas, yeah.
so you have to know. And when I again
You
and like
have to know.
yep. This is my and I'm going to go back to what I see on TV because that's like my reference point, right? But
Hmm.
I always see those agents, they seem extremely knowledgeable
You
about the
have
different
to.
areas,
Hmm.
right? So like where we are and the agents I work with, yeah, they can tell you
Yeah,
basics and know the school district and hey,
exactly.
here's a
Exactly.
restaurant and stuff. But I
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
think they could talk like that about our area the way you guys
No,
talk about the city.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I
Now,
agree.
when what do clients understand the city as well as the agents do? Like if hey, I'm looking for a place in Queens, but I live in Brooklyn, do they understand the nuances or do they really rely on the agents to kind of explain what they're walking into?
It depends. Many of my even expat clientele from Hong Kong, many of them lived in New York. So they understand the different areas. But New York has evolved. New York has evolved, but not that much, right? The soul of each area is still there, but it's changed. So, when they lived here 20, 30 years ago, the meatpacking district is not what it is now. It's like hopping, it's full of bars and hotels and, chic restaurants, right? So I have to
Hmm.
explain that to them, right? And Brooklyn is not what it was 20 years ago. My gosh, nobody went to Greenpoint. Now Greenpoint's, per square foot is almost the same as Manhattan, and they're shocked. So, yes, yes, it hasn't changed that much, but yes, it's changed a lot. So there's both that I have to explain to them. And I guess it also depends on whether they were buying it for investment or for them to live in.
Okay. Now, Okay, let's talk about what do buyers not understand about showing, or what might they not understand about showing properties in New York?
Yeah, I have to explain this to them the first time they come to me. So outside of New York, there's something called Showing Time, right? It's an app.
Hmm.
You punch in the address, you make an appointment, make like a reservation for when and what date and what time you want to see it. The listing agent, replies yes or no. Can you do it another time? All through this app, it takes 2 minutes of my time. Not the case in New York. The listing has agent has to be present at most showings. Some of them, they leave their key with the concierge, which makes our life easier. But I'm finding that actually it's such a pain in the butt to have to do it that way, especially when you have sometimes I have like 5, 6 showings lined up and I have to rely on myself to be on time and for them to be on time. And that doesn't always work, right? So it's extremely stressful. And just setting up the appointment, it just takes like 5 times longer because I have to coordinate with every single listing agent and you have a schedule, and if that appointment in the middle cannot be shown in the middle of that, and I have to move the whole thing. I mean, it's just I get it done, but it's a pain in the butt. um, but what I'm finding is that it's actually really nice to have the agent be present because they can really talk about the unit, the building, the area. Because I'm not always the expert in Murray Hill,
Hmm.
or Sutton Place, but they know inside out because that's their job. So I'm really starting to appreciate the fact that the listing agent has to be present, but it makes my job that much harder because I have to coordinate with the listing agent.
So there's a lot of work in that part of the transaction with you
Yeah.
guys, like actually getting people in
Get it.
and showing the
Yeah.
homes. Like, because here, everybody wants to be a listing agent. That's ideal because
Because
I can handle a crap load of listings because
mhm,
all I have to do is put a sign on a
pretty much
yard, put it in the MLS, and just let the
mhm,
other agents go show it,
show
right?
exactly, exactly.
But
Yep.
there, it's not the case.
Hmm.
So I could, in theory, if I'm organized and I have all my systems in place, I can handle a lot of listings here as a listing agent. How
Hmm.
many listings could a solo agent handle in New York with things the way they are there? If you had to guess, like where would you start? At what number of listings would you start to be like, I need help?
I would think 10, 8 to 10. But I think this is why you're seeing so many more teams in New York. Most listings you go to, it's a team of people. At least two, if not three or four. Yeah, there's some solo agents, but you see a lot more teams in New York that and for that reason, right? They can't always be at every listing, right? So they, share the responsibility.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about co-ops versus condos? What's the
Yes.
difference?
So co-op, you own a share in the building, right? It's not really yours per se. You own a share. Condo, you own your own unit. So
Okay.
co-ops, you have a lot less control. When you go through the application, if you want to sell your unit, you're basically at the mercy of the co-op board as to whether they're going to approve your buyer or not. And up until now, I think it's in the process of being approved where the co-op board has to give a reason for the rejection of the buyer. Up until now, they didn't have to. So I had a case where, I worked literally 40 hours on a co-op package. You know, I mean, they want all your asset information, your buyer's asset information, financial assets, crypto, portfolio, retirement fund, anything. And it has to be in chronological order. It has to be for 3 months, PDF, collated. It literally took me 40 hours. he got rejected and no reason.
Wow.
He had very good financial standing, really good reserve. He was going to use it part time. And no, there was no, not even like, oh, we didn't like the color of the sweater that he was wearing. It's like, we didn't like his Brazilian accent, nothing. So it was extremely disheartening. And he had just ended up saying, screw co-ops, I'm going to buy a condo. We ended up closing on a condo 2 months later because we didn't have to go through that. But,
Do you?
they're really at their mercy.
Yeah. Do you think that with that legislation that requires the transparency, so it sounds like that's a good thing, right?
It is, yeah,
But
yeah.
but do you think that now you're going to see some deals go through that would not have gone through before the transparency?
I think so. I think so because they cannot give a bogus reason why they're rejecting, a buyer who's in good financial standing.
Makes sense. Okay. Now you also said, which I thought was interesting, that if I'm a buyer, the lender needs to approve the building, right?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
talk about that briefly?
yes. So, especially for condos, right? Because you're so difference between co-op, huge difference between co-op. If you're coming to me as an investor, I would never recommend a co-op, right? First of all, most of them will not let you sublease or rent your unit. Some will, if you live there for 2 years, you can rent it for 1 year, but you got to come back and live for another 2 years. Or if you've lived there for 5 years, you can rent it for, whatever, indefinite. So there's so many rules regarding, renting your own unit. Whereas condo, you can rent whenever you want, as long as it's long term. Airbnb is not allowed for most. There are some exceptions, like the Perry. Um, so, yeah, I think I'm sorry, I lost my train of
No, it's okay.
thought.
It's okay. We were talking. I was just asking about the lenders needing to
Yes,
approve
yes.
buildings.
So condos is something that's the first thing I ask the lender. Like, have you approved in the building? Because oftentimes what happens with condos is because you're allowed to rent, you know, sometimes it's majority of the units that are rented, right?
Hmm.
And for lenders, that's a liability when the owner doesn't live in the unit, right?
Hmm.
They're not as invested. So
Right.
they find that to be a liability and they might reject the building, which means they're not going to fund your financing.
What else are
So
they
that's the
looking
first
for with that when they're looking to approve a building?
the financial stability of the building itself. How much is in the reserve? Um, have they been sued in the past? Is there current lawsuit pending? Right? Those are huge red flags for lenders because it's a liability for them. So those are the
Okay.
things. So, the first thing I ask is, and I've learned the lesson the hard way, when my buyer comes to me and says, listen, I have a pre-approval with Chase. Oh, that's great. Let me ask if they've approved this building yet. And if they haven't, let's look at some alternatives. And I've had this case where, you know, he worked with his own bank and he was pre-approved, all good to go. And they hadn't approved that building. So literally like a week before the closing, I had to switch him over. And it
What
worked out, but we were lucky.
what is the do the banks do, like, what is their approval process? Like, how long does it take? Like, if they say, like, if like the buyer is dead set, I have to have this unit, and like it hasn't been approved by the lender yet, like, what do they have to do and how long does that take to approve it?
I think it could take a month or even longer. So that's what we were trying to do in this case. He really wanted to go with his own bank. I was, okay, let's try it. After I think about 3 weeks, they still couldn't get it together. There's so many forms that are particular to New York, right? There's something called Aztec form no one's ever heard of outside of New York. And he was working with lenders who are based in New Mexico and Texas. They had no idea what this form was. And I'm like, listen, this comes from the lender. I've confirmed this with many other lenders and my own manager because I didn't know what it was. and they refused. They're like, we don't do this. So his attorney was like, well, I guess they're asking me to do it. Maybe I have to do it. I'm like, no, this is not your job. And they just refused to provide this form that they're required to provide. And I said, listen, this after about 3 weeks, they still could not provide it. And that's when my buyer was like, okay, we gotta close this with these guys and go with your lender. And that took about 2 weeks because
Okay.
they knew the building. They had a relationship with us, with our brokerage firm, and it just worked. But that still took probably 2.5 weeks.
Okay. Is this scenario something that a listing agent can be proactive on and maybe say, hey, I
Yes,
know that these banks will have approved the building?
absolutely. Yeah, I wish it, and many of them do. Um,
So if I come in with Bank A and they haven't approved the building, but the listing agent says, hey, these banks have approved it, that can help
yeah.
the process?
Yes, yes. Many of actually most agents I've worked with, they have a list. They send me a list if I know if they know that my buyer is very interested. Yes.
Okay. How often is this fact that the lenders do this? How often does that derail a deal? Not often. Often.
I think it derails like temporarily, but if you're a good broker, you're gonna find a replacement lender and you're gonna get the deal done. There's
Okay.
so many lenders out there,
Cool.
and we all have relationship with our own lenders. So if I come to so and so and say, listen, I really need help. We need to get this done. It got rejected. This lender's not able to finance. Can you work with me? And they'll put all their pennies into it, and we'll close within 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay. So I want to talk about lawyers for a second. So here, if a lawyer, a real estate attorney is involved in a deal, a lot of times it's somebody who, like, hey, maybe they're trying to sell their house on their own and they don't want to pay an agent. They can get the stuff done with an attorney, but the attorneys don't sell the houses on the regular basis. So, and a
Oh,
lot of times, at least here in Pennsylvania, they're a pain in the butt. They come in,
okay.
they think they're hot stuff, and they just kind of make waves where it doesn't need to be.
Yes.
Are there lawyers involved on every single deal in New York?
Yes, New
And
York and New Jersey. Yes, both.
okay, and are they
Yeah.
so because they're involved on every deal, it's not as much of a hindrance or pain in the neck that it would be here, or is it?
It depends. So I have a few attorneys that I work with. So you have some that are like deal makers and some that are deal breakers. Okay, so they do get in the way more often than not. You know, I one of the deals fell through. I'm not saying it's actually that I have to give the attorney a lot of credit. He worked really hard on this deal. He was my buyer's advocate, so I give him credit for that. But I think there are cases where they make things more complicated than it needs to be. I'm like, I'm not an attorney, but I can see this doesn't need to be this way. Why is it so complicated? Why are you making it so hard for everyone, right? So I think it really depends on the attorney and the deal. You know, most of the attorneys I worked with, so this is the importance of, and I think one of my Instagram posts, I talk about this. Working as a team is so important. When a buyer comes to me or seller comes to me with their own agent, more often than not, they don't really keep me in the loop. And that's extremely frustrating because, they kind of overlook us as an agent, right? Like our role in the deal, because they think they can get this done between the buyer or the seller and themselves. And that's not true because we are so integral to the process, and I have to constantly remind them, like, can you CC me? Because I want to help you guys. It's not because I want to butt into your business. If you ever need me to interject and help out in any way and facilitate, I need to know what's going on. And sometimes like a month later, an attorney comes to me like, oh, this happened, and I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you much earlier. So sometimes they're definitely a hindrance because they don't communicate with me and they think they can do the job themselves. But but more often than not, we work as a team, and I think that is extremely important to get to the closing table.
100%. And I think there's uh there's there's so many moving parts that if
Mm-hmm.
it's not working
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
it could get done, but it's going to be harder than it has to be. And
Harder.
it's, yep.
Exactly.
Have you ever done a deal where somebody bought the house in part or in whole with crypto?
No, I haven't. But I did have a buyer in New York who's one of the major assets was in crypto, and it was really hard to give proof because there's no statement, right? So I
Hmm.
just had to like print out all of his crypto sales, like pages and pages of it.
Is it becoming more common to see or hear about deals being done with crypto or not yet?
I've never, not yet, not yet.
Okay.
No. Maybe it'll get there at some point, especially Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. I I mean I've heard stories, but yeah, I've not it's not a regular thing yet, but
No, but I think in Asia, I think it might be more common in Asia, or I think they're more open to it.
yeah, I mean I think the thing is the general public doesn't always understand it. I think if they
Right,
understood it better, I think it would be more commonplace, but it's not
right.
quite there yet. Every year it
Mm-mm.
gets a little bit more, so we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I had asked you about the agents from Million Dollar Listing, Ryan Serhan, and others, and you said you had a chance to work with Frederick Eklund at one point.
Yes,
Can you
yeah.
talk about
Frederick
that
and John.
experience? Oh yeah.
Oh, John Gomes and Frederick. When they were at Cork, I started around the same time that they did, and we did a deal together, a penthouse deal. And actually, I'm gonna sell that soon. I'm gonna be listing it, and it was really fun. They're extremely knowledgeable. Um, they're passionate, which is what I love about this business. Everyone's passionate about what they do.
Mhm.
Um, and they back then they were just starting off. So I mean, now they're really really busy, but it was really fun working with them. And I think working as agents that are just starting off versus now, there's obviously a huge difference, right? I mean, Frederick and John are the same people, but they're so much more successful. So I love seeing their success and following their journey. And I did keep in touch with them here and there. Um, but I think how they built their business is an example to all of us,
Okay.
you know?
I would agree. I think they're like when I first got my license, I would, you know, I see around in my mind. I think a lot of people come into real estate with like different view of what it really is, right?
Mhm.
And I saw agents around here. I'm like, I want it to be like what I see there, you know?
Yeah.
And you try, so I would watch those shows and I think they portray a level of professionalism that you don't see from everybody all the time, which I took as like, a good example. And yeah, I mean, I think that's very cool that you got, I'm sure it's just the everyday stuff for you, but for
Right.
somebody looking in, it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. So are those big fancy open houses, brokers open things, are they
Hmm.
like all the time? Do they happen? Is that super common?
Yes, yes. I was gonna say that's what another thing I love about New York real estate. I mean, honestly, I joke about it, but I'm like, you never have to pay for your own meal. Literally, like almost every day, there's broker open house with, I went to one with, uh, I think it was one of Frederick's building where they flew in like Miami uh, crab claws, I think, or lobster. They we had to like crack it open, but it was so good. But it was like a special thing because they were showcasing a Miami property, and so it was really appropriate. Um, s- you know, Free flowing prosecco, oysters, caviar, you know, I mean, you name it, they serve it, right? Sushi is just, that's commonplace. You're like, oh, just sushi, really? But yeah, literally, like, you can get fed every single meal, lunch and dinner, you know, between all these broker open houses. You'll never starve as an agent. And it's fun. It's just, it's, you know, sometimes you end up meeting only agents, and that's great. You know, making connections among agents is extremely important. You know, I just did a showing near Highline, a condo, and I worked with Stuart Sussman, who's also was at core with Frederick Eklund. And, you know, I recognize him, he recognized me. You know, like broker relationship is I would say number one asset as an agent. You know, I just did a rental deal where this agent recognized me from 2 years ago. I didn't do a deal with her, but she did a showing for me and she recognized me. You know, I was professional, I was courteous with her. And she's like, "Oh, Ha-Lim, I'd love to do this deal with you." We got in the elevator. It was an off-market property. And she's like, "I'm only," you know, and she told my clients, like, "I'm only doing this for Ha-Lim because, you know, she's very good at what she does." And, you know, it was such an affirmation for me, right? In front of my clients, especially, you know. And, you know, it's really important to go to these things and get to know the other agents
That's
and have amazing meals and get dressed up.
yeah, no, for sure. No, I mean, like, again, we see all this stuff all the time, but like that's. I guess would you say it's just kind of part of the culture of real estate in New York, those type of
Yeah,
things? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you get that in New Jersey too, like, but you know, they're like sandwiches from local
Yeah.
caterer. You don't
Mm-hmm.
get dressed up, you know.
No.
There's no swanky parties with prosecco. Well, sometimes there is, you know, if it's like
Yeah.
a, you know, really fancy townhouse or something. But yeah, that's something that's quite unique to the New York market.
That's awesome. What anything else that's like special about the New York market and the culture in, you know, amongst realtors there? Anything else you can think of that maybe people don't know or don't realize?
Um, Besides a lot of partying and the importance of the relationship, I'm not, I'm not sure. There's a lot that goes behind the scenes, I find, in the New York market more than, you know, the New Jersey market. And I say New Jersey because that's the only comparison that I have. You know, it's like they really come to you and they're like, you know, Ha-Lim, let's do this deal together. Let's make it happen. And I find that more with New York brokers than with New Jersey agents.
I, from what you're saying, it sounds like there's just you're surrounded by a lot of hustle, but you're also surrounded by like a lot of proactivity. Like people
Hmm.
are trying, they're not just sitting around waiting for things to
No,
happen. They're out there trying to
right.
make things happen. And
Exactly.
that has to be if that, you know, if I were in a situation like that for what I do, and I mean
Hmm.
sometimes I am, but like it's just got to it it does it help keep the battery charged when things do get hard and like hey, you're working your butt off and like physically you're tired, but like does that kind of keep you going, that type of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. You know, a broker comes to you and says, "Ha-Lim, I loved working with you. Let's do this deal together. We can do this together as a team." Yeah, that push, you know, like sometimes I'm like crying over a deal and, you know, someone texts you and says, you know, "I loved working with you. Let's do this together." You're like, "Oh, great." You know, let me wipe off my tears. You know, let's keep going, you know? Yeah, I think the support and the teamwork mentality that you get from the New York agents is definitely a huge advantage, huge plus as an agent.
Okay. You had talked about regulations and the rental market and how things are, you know, the difference of who's paying the broker's commission. Can you talk about that a little bit? What's going on there?
Yeah, so in the New York market, the law just changed last June, where before June, the tenants were paying 1 month to 15% of the annual rent commission, which was shared between the tenant's agent and the listing agent. And sometimes the listing agent got their own commission, but that's a whole different issue. But after June, the law changed, and whoever hires their own agent has to pay their own agent. So if you have a listing agent for a rental, the landlord has to pay their own agent. As a tenant, if you hire a tenant agent, you pay for your own agent. So, some tenants don't want an agent at that point, right? They don't want to pay if they don't have to, right? If they know the market well, if they know exactly where they want to live, they look at street easy, they make the appointments, and they don't have to pay the rent. So I think that's changed the industry a lot in the rental market. Representing a tenant is not as common as it used to be. For me, I still help tenants, who are not as familiar with the market or out of towners, right? I've done quite a few rentals where I've done virtual showings for my Asian clients who are based in Asia. I've done two of those in the past few months. So, in that in those transactions, I'm invaluable. They need me, right? So they don't mind paying me for the work I do. So, but that's really changed the rental market for us as brokers in New York.
Did it just get more difficult, or did it actually, like, was it a real big negative?
Yeah, it got difficult for agents who represent tenant. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I think for listing agents, not so much because,
It's
landlords
already
don't want to
understood.
be, yeah, like yes, they're paying. Oh, so what's happened is, as a consequence of that, I think these legislators really don't understand the industry. They're not in the real estate market. They think, oh, this sounds good. It's going to benefit everyone. No, because now the landlords have to cover the 1 month or 15% commission. They jacked up the price. And as a consequence, people are not moving. As a consequence of that, there's no inventory. And I was just doing a rental downtown, and it's just literally within 6 to 12 hours, anything listed on Street Easy was gone. And if my client didn't respond within 3 hours, we couldn't get that unit. And it just got so frustrating to a point. So, this is what I mean by, being creative as an agent. Like, I was like, okay, scrap this. We can't do this anymore. We don't have time. He needs something right away. I started calling up all the agents, that I saw on Street Easy who had these listings. I'm like, listen, Janet, do you have anything coming up in the next week or two? Because my client needs to move in right away. We can't wait, And I found them three off-market properties, and that's how I got the deal done. But, you really have to like constantly adapt and be creative in this business.
Okay. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think sometimes if you're not creative in this business, a deal is not happening.
No.
Like you can, you see sometimes it's the agent working with the other agent, working with the seller or buyer, working with the lender. Like if all those pieces don't,
No, but
don't
together.
work. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's
It's
crazy.
really
So
like a puzzle,
it
You got to put all the
is.
puzzle together. And we
100.
are the glue. We are the glue.
Yep. 100%. So, when we talked before the show, I had said, so from somebody who's not there, you hear things on the news and whatnot that people are going to be leaving New York and this and that and real estate's going to be suffering. Like what are you seeing in the market? What's the sentiment like? What do you think the rest of this year is going to play out if you had a guess how things
Crystal,
are going?
crystal ball. I wish I had a crystal ball.
Don't we all?
Yeah. New Jersey, I don't think there's going to be much of a difference. There's still really low inventory. I think the rate is supposed to keep going down, but I think that's not enough to make a difference. We're hoping there's going to be a little bit more inventory, but we're not counting on it. New York, on the other hand, I think if it's New York is always going to be New York. There's always going to be demand. We didn't see, yes, there was a little bit of panic And we, in New Jersey, we saw a few buyers coming in saying, I live on the, I had a colleague who said, oh, I have this lead who came from the Upper West Side and they're looking at $3 to $4 million homes because they want to get out, after the election, they wanted to get out. I don't think they bought anything. So I think there was a little bit of panic looking, but I think that's all been settled. And, if it's priced right, the inventory moves. If it's priced high, it's going to sit on the market. Days on the market in New York is much different than days on the market in New Jersey. I think New Jersey is like 30 days. New York is more like three to 6 months. But if it's priced right, it will move.
Okay. So price right, like what's the fastest you think somebody that's priced right with a reasonable property in New York, how quickly could you sell it right now?
Are you talking like getting an offer or closing?
Like just
That's very
well,
different.
no, not closing,
Days on
getting
the
like
market.
going
Days
under
on getting
contract.
over.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Probably like 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah. I
So if I
think.
put
Yeah.
like something, I'm not talking about something that's like this astronomical luxury property. I mean, I know those don't always go
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
away.
It's a certain price point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's say
Okay.
like $1 million, 1 bedroom in Midtown. You if it's like fixed up, if it's renovated nicely, it'll probably go within a month. But it really depends, right? Like people want turnkey property, units in New York. They don't want to be renovating in New York because it's you have to
That-
go through a lot of hoops, right? So if you have a beautifully renovated 1 bedroom that's $1.2 million in Midtown, Upper East Side, even Upper West Side, that's gonna go within 30 days for sure. But if it needs work and it's 999 in a co-op, that's gonna sit for 3 months to six
Okay.
months. So it really depends.
$1.2 million for a 1 bedroom. Oh, it's crazy.
Hey, if it's beautifully renovated, that's a great
Yeah,
deal.
right. 1 bedroom. That's nuts. I remember when I was in college, I went to me and my one friend from back here went to visit his friend who lived in Greenwich Village, and him and his roommate we stayed at their place for the night. Their bedrooms, it was a 2 bedroom apartment. Their bedrooms were literally like walk-in closets.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, New
know.
York. New York's crazy, man. But
But
it's you. If you love it, you love it, right?
exactly, there's no other place like it.
Okay. All right. So coming up on the end, who's if I'm thinking about maybe I want to buy a place in New York,
Hmm.
why am I working with Ha-Lim?
Because I will go way above and beyond as your advocate. And I can attest to this in many ways. And I think all my clients can attest to this. I will find the right property for you, even maybe even off market, because, I will find a way to do that. Find a way. Actually, there's lack of inventory in New York as well for specific properties, right? So you see a lot of like in search of type of emails coming from other agents, and that's something I would do as well. And I am extremely knowledgeable about the different areas. I've worked with clients, buying in different areas, and I'm just extremely a hard worker, and I'm a team player, and I do whatever it takes to get the deal done.
Love
You
that.
know, yeah.
Cool. And how would somebody get in touch with you or follow you or
Okay, so I have an Instagram handle, which is hl.globalrealestate. I'm on Facebook as well with the same handle. And you can look me up on Coldwell Banker. I'm with Coldwell Banker Warburg in New York and Coldwell Banker Ridgewood in New Jersey.
are you
Yeah,
dancing on TikTok?
Not yet, not yet. But I'm actually promoting some Korean skincare products on Instagram,
I
and
saw that.
that's done very well for me. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna try that peel off mask." I'm like, "Okay, well, I have quite a few other products that I want to talk about because Korean
Hmm.
skin. It's so funny because half of the times I go to these showings and people are like, "Oh my gosh, your skin is glowing. What do you use?" So I'm like, "Oh, I should totally promote what I'm using on my skin."
Very cool. Um, and last question, we ask all of our guests this: would you send us off with a positive message to the world?
It's hard, it's challenging, it's hard out there, but don't ever give up. Resilience pays off, and your client sees that. When you work hard for them, when they understand that you are their fierce advocate, the deals close and they appreciate what you do, and it that one deal just adds so much to your life, and it's just gonna keep rolling from there.
Awesome. That's great. That's it. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Brian. This was so fun, such a privilege.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
And
gonna.
I've
It's
always wanted to do this, so I'm so excited.
very cool.